G'day, I was really fortunate. A friend of mine was traveling through the US and they were able to collect and bring one of the Project Good Karma kits to me. I'll give you a quick look at what's in the box. We'll then run through fixing a Karma drone with it. We'll also look and talk a little bit about the software as well that Josh has done that complements the kit to remove the requirement to be, typing within putty, all those commands and that sort of stuff. Just makes it a little bit simpler. And it kind of really complements the fact that this kit requires no soldering, which is one of the main advantages about it. When you first look at this kit, it's very professionally done. Everything from the packaging to the actual product itself. So when we open the box, what you'll find inside is there's a couple of things. So the first one is the actual module itself. So it comes in a 3D printed case. It includes the cable. It has LEDs on it so you can see what functions are happening. There's a spot to put the other cable in, as well as the USB-C cable to connect it to a computer. And there's also a slot that you put the SD card in, regardless of whether you bought one as part of the kit or whether you're using your own. It also has a little mount which enables you to just sit it on the arm so it's not just floating around in your workspace. One of the other things that comes with the kit is there is actually Josh's card, and on that card it includes 2 QR codes. One of them takes you to the video that he did on how to use the kit, and the other one takes you to the instructions, which includes things like the download for the Commander software that he's done. Also within the kit there's a set of cables. So this cable plugs into the module itself, but it also connects onto that J2 connector to provide the feedback from the processor about what's happening. And it also has a probe cable, and it includes a little probe that's used to trigger that TP1. One of the benefits of this kit is that it incorporates the TTL device that we would normally use, as well as the SD card, and it consumes power through the USB-C connector. So that's where there's no longer this need to solder wires onto the board so that the SD card's powered. It's done through that unit. I also have I got the SD card with it, and it's pretty straightforward. All you need to do is just plug the SD card into the SD card slot. It actually goes, I'd call it upside down. And it's a standard spring load SD card slot. So that's in. The 4-pin cable only goes one way. As you can see, there's a raised bit on the back, which goes closest to the SD card slot. So that just needs to be pushed into place. And that's it. The unit's ready to be connected to the drone and used. So give me a minute, I'll grab a drone and we will fix it. Righto, so I've got a broken unit here, and I'll just show you what some of the symptoms are. If I put the battery in, attempt to turn it on, generally the LEDs come on the arms, the power LED will stay white, and the gimbal won't initialize. As you can see, it's just flopping around everywhere. On some units, what you find is that the LED will change to red on the power button, and it will shortly after power itself off after a couple of minutes. But the telltale signs are generally that the gimbal doesn't do anything, and that's because the video processor hasn't initialized and can't boot up. So there we go. This one's actually switched over to the red flashing power LED, and in a second it'll shut itself down. Most of the times you just get a solid white LED and it doesn't change from that. You can't power the unit off by holding down the button. You need to actually just physically remove the battery to get it to power down. So what I'm going to do with this one, I'm just going to remove the battery. I'm going to remove the gimbal. So to open the case, you will need a torque screwdriver. I believe it's a T8. And there are 2 screws under the battery compartment and 1 under each arm. So first thing you need to do is remove those, and it wasn't the T8. I should know which one it is because it's the one that has got the most, what is it? It is a T8. I must have grabbed the T6. It's the one with the most usage on the head. So we just remove those screws and put them aside somewhere nice and safe, because we want to put those back in. With removing the screws from the arms, the front arms need to be extended to get to the screws. And you can generally just put your driver in on a little bit of an angle, and that'll get him out. The rear ones, the arms need to be retracted. So I just retract those rear arms. I'm going to put the legs down to make it easy to get in there. Once again, just on a little bit of an angle, I can get that guy out. Same with the other side. Righto. Put those aside with the other two. Now to remove the cover, it's very straightforward. It's almost like if you've ever taken the shell off the top of a crab. You just kind of start at the back, lift it up at the corners, you lift it up, and you can just kind of rotate it and slide it off the other lug on the front of the retainer there. So at this point, the only thing left to do is to remove this shield off the can. To do that, we generally just use a little flat blade screwdriver, and all you need to do, it's just a kind of a press tolerance fit. You just want to kind of get along the edge and just work along the edge so it starts lifting up. So I'm applying a little bit of pressure towards it and just levering it up. You don't need to go crazy on it. And there we go, that came off pretty straightforward. I'll put that aside with the screws. Now, once we connect the device up, we need to trigger the SD card to boot by touching on what we refer to as TP1. I'll show you that through the magnifier in a sec. But let's get this module on, and I'll show you how it fits. Before we do that, one thing we need to do is remove the silicon off this arm board connector. A little bit of silicon there, just be careful with it, and lift that little black clip up. So once we remove that silicon and detach the existing arm cable, we can move that out of the way. When you connect this back up, you need to ensure you put a little bit of some sort of glue on there. I generally use a silicone, just so that it doesn't disconnect during flight. Okay, so here's the module that just clips onto the arm. What I want to do is I just want to rotate that arm around. I can now take this connector and plug it into J2. It only goes one way. And then I can also get this cable coming off, the flat cable coming off the unit, and put it into the arm board. Just remember that the blue goes up. You want the contacts facing down so that they make contact with the connector. So once you do that, you just need to move the little black clip back down. So that's now locked in. Here's my little probe. It's got a needle point on it. What we were doing previously was you would actually scratch some of the underfill off the TP1 location. Some people had a little bit of trouble doing that. They've knocked the resistor off at that spot. This is designed so that you can just kind of press down on the underfill, and it will actually just push down through that underfill and make the connection for you. So give me a minute, I'll swap a few things around, and we'll install the software, and then we will show you where the TP1 point is and run you through the Commander software and how that works. So back in a sec.
Righto, so we're going to install the software. I've downloaded it, just dropped it in a folder. So depending on what operating system you're on is kind of going to depend a little bit on the experience you get. If you're using one of the older operating systems that doesn't have security around signed installers, then it'll just install. Some of the later ones, you might find that you get the odd security question. So if we just double click on the MSI, as we can see, Windows is protecting my PC. If I click on more info, it gives me the option to run anyway. It's complaining about the publisher, unknown publisher, so that relates to the certificate that's been used to sign the file. So I click run anyway, and the install starts. So I click next. I want to install it for everyone, so I click next, next. Yes, I want to install it. Close. Run it from the start menu. The first time I run it, it tells me that I need to update my version of .NET, and I just click yes, that I want to update that. The installer then takes me to this page, and the download should automatically kick off. Once that completes, I can just open the file and run its installer. Okay, that's installed successfully, so I'll close that. And if I just go and run the Karma controller again from the start menu, this time it actually comes up and I am good to go. Okay, so next we'll just go through selecting the COM port, and we'll then flash the unit. So the first thing we'll do is bring up Device Manager and go to the ports section. Now, this will show you this device, but what you might find is you have other devices there. So the easiest way to work out which device is the good Karma is to just remove the connector and wait to see which one disappears. So it was on COM4. So if I plug that back in, the device on COM4 will come back. Now that's important because when we run the Commander software, we need to tell it which COM port to use. You might only have one COM port, so it doesn't make any difference because that'll be the only one available, but where you have a couple, that's one way to determine which one is the correct one. Okay, so I've just started up the Commander software, and I'm just confirming that I've got it set for COM4. What I then need to do is just press on the disconnected button, which will connect me to that device. So as you can see, it says waiting for login prompt. That's because the device isn't initialized, hasn't been started. What I'll see in the Commander screen is anything that's being returned through that device. So if I just turn it on now, I'll be able to see basically a failed boot. And as you can see there, it's tried to boot off the NAND, boot NAND, and then it says NAND boot failed. So what we need to do next is we just want to, using our probe, we just want to put it on that TP1 spot so that we change it from booting from NAND to booting from SD. So let's just remove the battery. I'm just going to clear the RX buffer, which clears the screen. I'm still connected.
Okay, so from this point, all I need to do is, so we've got two capacitors, one here, one there, and then this is the TP1. So this right-hand side is connected to ground. I need to probe in on the left-hand side, so I just push that into there, connect my battery on the drone, press the power button, and as we can see, it is now booting off the SD card. But as you can see, the boot up is taking a lot longer, whereas before it failed, you can see that it's actually now booting. This boot is different to the boot that it normally does. The boot that this normally does is a lot shorter, so that also tells me that I'm not booting off NAND even if the NAND was good. As a general rule, I hold the probe there until it gets to the login screen.
So from this point, all the commands are automated. As you can see, the login screen button is flashing. So what I want to do is press on that login button, and that automatically logs me in.
As you can see, it's now returned a command prompt, and the unlock flash is now flashing. So if I click that, what it does is it goes through and it makes any of the partitions that were not writable, makes them writable. The important one is MTD 0. The backup flash is now enabled, so I click that, and that will back up my flash. And as you can see, there's errors in that, and they're not at the physical level. Basically, the bootloader on the device is corrupted. Before I write the new one in, I just need to erase the flash. So I click on the erase flash button. As you can see, all this is in a very logical order. And as you can see, it's completed the erase, and it now says write new bootloader. So if I click on the write new bootloader, as you can see, it's writing that data out. And it's now finished. So what I need to do is basically, I'm just going to remove the battery. You can see up here it says new boot image loaded successfully. It's restarting the command injector. So it's now back to that beginning part of the process where it's waiting for me to, for the login prompt. So technically what I could do at this point is I could just connect this unit to another one and I could do the next one, because it's now at that point. As soon as it sees that the device is booting and gets to a login prompt, it'll provide me that button again. So what I do at this point is I remove the battery, and I'm going to leave the device connected so we can see what a good boot looks like. I am going to disconnect the ARM board and plug the proper ARM board in. So battery's in, camera's in, I'm going to turn it on, and we should notice, and as you can see straight away, it's booting off the NAND, the camera's initialized. Shortly the power button will change to red, which means that it's looking around. I'll turn the controller on. This unit currently isn't paired.
Okay, so the controller's come up and said that it's not paired. What I'm going to do is I'm going to power this unit down, which I can now do because it's working. As you can see, if I hold in the power button, it now shuts down. So to put it in pairing mode, I just power it on, but hold the power button in for about 8 seconds and it will start flashing blue, which means it's in pairing mode. There we go, it's flashing blue, and all the arm lights are flashing as well. So I'm going to say, let's pair, and it says, make sure camera is powered on, then press and hold the power button for 8 seconds until the lights on the arms begin to blink. So it's doing that. It then has seen that the Karma is ready to go. It says, press the power button on the Karma. When pairing is complete, the button flashes green. So I hold the power LED in until it starts flashing green. The controller just said pairing is successful, and I can see it's starting to initialize the drone. If I swipe up on the controller, it says there's an update. Not all components are the correct version. So I'll go into About, Devices, and the drone itself is on version 2, which is a fairly old version. So we'll want to update that. The camera's good, the stabilizer's good, it's just the drone that's behind in this case. So if I go into software, I can see that there is a update for the drone. So I want to update that. The controller is already at 2.50.1, which means it already has the software to update the drone on it. If the controller was at an older version, say 2.50 or 2, I would need to upgrade the controller's firmware first. There's a separate video on that. I'll drop a link in the description to it. Now, during this process, the drone will actually reboot and do a couple of other things. So what you'll notice is that the camera will go limp again. You'll see some activity on the power light, as well as the arm lights. You also see activity within, putty. It's to be expected because basically it's power cycling the unit. rebooting now. I can move this out of the way, I don't need that anymore. That's what happens when you get old. Okay, so the drone is initialized again, and the process is finished on the controller. The drone hasn't actually booted up yet, so it's not showing. And so what the gimbal's doing at the moment, that may look a bit weird, you might think it's out of control. So it's actually doing a calibration of the gimbal, which is something you do see sometimes when you do some of the firmware upgrades. Any moment now, it'll just kick back to the normal spot. And if I go into devices, I can now see the drone again, and it's up to the correct version, which is 2.50.1. Now, if I drop back to the home screen, I'll be able to swipe up, and I just need to run through a couple of things. So it looks like this hasn't been calibrated for a while, so it's saying calibration is required. I'm not going to do that right now. And it won't let me fly until I do it. But as you can see, this unit is now operational. You do get the calibration required message sometimes. This one obviously hasn't been calibrated for a while, and I dare say it's never been calibrated on this version, which would be one of the main triggers for the calibration. It also wants me to just confirm what settings I want for the camera in relation to linear view and things like that. I'll run through that later. I can't calibrate it inside. This floor's got a lot of metal in it. And then there's also some metal in the roof and things like that. So calibration would fail if I did it here. You need a clear view of the sky to do a calibration. It's not recommended to do it on overcast days. If you're using the UAV app, you should check it to see what sort of signal strength you're getting, or what it believes the conditions are like on the day. And you should take that into account when you're looking to calibrate as well. Generally, some people say that you should calibrate every time you fly it. I generally go by the rule that if I move at any large distances, that's when I'll calibrate it. And a large distance to me would be, anything over about 20 kilometers. But I generally fly mine in the same place every time. I don't tend to move around a lot with it. All right, so I'll leave the video here. This unit's working. I'll make sure that I put some sort of glue on that connector. I will also make sure that I put the can lid back on, I put all the screws back in. Once you do this process, you should then take it for a test flight. And it, as I said, can't hurt to calibrate, even if you haven't done the firmware update, just as a matter of course. And I generally do both the compass and the accelerometer when I do a calibration for that first time. All right, so I'll power this unit off, put the cover on, I'll calibrate it, take it for a test flight, do all that sort of fun stuff. Alrighty, thanks for watching.